Yeah, I think we are. Are we ready to go now, Matthew?
Yes, you're ready to go.
I don't see Alan here yet. Is Alan Howeller with us?
Not on the screen.
I'll try him, Don. I'll try to reach him.
Would you please? Thank you. While I do believe we have sufficient membership to have a quorum, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll and we can confirm that?
Oh, council roll, or do you want me to call CIC roll?
This is the board. This is the CIC, the membership of the CIC, which is all members of council plus the mayor and the treasurer.
Okay. So not Joan, not Tom, not Bob.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure I got the right ones. Okay. For attendance, Mr. Bessel.
Here.
Mr. Howeller.
He's joining right now, Becky.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Ms. Duke.
Here.
Ms. Masenko.
Here.
Mr. Baysmith.
Here.
Mr. Kreidler.
Here.
Okay. You said Mr. Hoeller's joining.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Madam Clerk, with or without Mr. Howeller, I believe we have a quorum. Can you confirm that?
We do have a quorum. I confirm.
So with that, I'm going to call this meeting of the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation, the membership of that corporation, calling this meeting to order, asking that everyone mute unless they are speaking, which in most cases can be done just by pressing the space bar on your computer keyboard. And I'm going to just start with the agenda. I will note, I think on some copies, I'm not sure if it's the one everyone else got, but the date at the top is on my copy is January 21st, which was the originally scheduled date for this meeting. In fact, the date should be February 10th today. So that is one change in the agenda. And we are going to have I guess the next item is the minutes of the meeting. And and you'll note this is the meeting of the membership held on February 15th, 2020. So I'm sure you all have vivid recollections of that meeting. And you will notice that perhaps to save some trees or for continuity's sake, the minutes are divided into three parts. So it starts with the membership meeting. It then turns to a meeting of council for certain things that only council can do. And then it went back to the membership meeting. I can't explain at all why it's necessary, but it's kind of, if you think back to our organizational meetings of council when we adjourn, sign, die, that's sort of what we've done here. So these meetings have been circulated. These minutes have been circulated. Right now, the vote here is going to be only on the first and the third parts of the meeting. It will not concern the part that is actually council. So do I have a motion to accept the minutes for that meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or changes? All those in favor, then please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 3 on the agenda is the establishment of the membership of the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation. And this is something that we have to do annually, even though we have done it, we did it last year. And basically is that the chairman of the GCIC is the mayor, the treasurer of the GCIC is and the treasurer secretary is the village treasurer, who will, with the secretarial side of it, receive excellent assistance from our village clerk. And then the other members are, of course, the members of council. Do I have a motion to establish what I have just said as the membership of the GCIC?
So, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next, due to something that I noticed as I was going through the Code of Regulations, which is of course our bylaws, we have to, the Board of Directors is supposed to set the date for the annual meeting. The Board of Directors, I did not think to have the board do that. So what I would propose here is that the membership first waive the need for the Board of Directors to set the date for the meeting, which is to say, continue with our meeting as of this date. Do I have a motion for such a waiver?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I would wonder, just the board is going to set the meeting for, set the date for the next annual meeting. And I'm wondering how you would feel about having that meeting on the same date as the February council meeting in 2022. So giving you plenty notice here. Therefore it could just be just before the council meeting. Would that be acceptable to the group, that I can pass this along to the board?
I think that's a great idea.
But wouldn't that be a conflict with planning board?
Well, I don't think so. Planning commission usually ends, before 7 o'clock, before the council meeting is to begin. And so we would just, this is the council members, not the board of the, this is the council, this is the date for the membership meeting. So it is just council, the treasurer, and the mayor.
I understand, but that would prohibit members of council from participating in the planning commission meeting that night.
Only by 5 minutes or so. I mean, it's going to be a very short, maybe 10 or 15 minutes at most. And usually the meeting ends. And we could usually the meeting of planning commission ends at least 15 minutes before council begins at 7. If it doesn't, we could just push the start of the council meeting back from 7 and notify and put that into our meeting notice. It's rather than having a totally separate meeting for what is largely a corporate housekeeping function.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a vote?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
is it possible to move your time frame up?
how so?
If it's likely, as Nancy was saying, to run into, if it's a possibility of running into planning commission meeting, is it possible to move your suggested time frame for the annual meeting up, say, an hour?
Until what I was thinking of was it would start at 6:45, 15 minutes before the council meeting. When would you have it start?
Why not have it earlier on
4:30.
afternoon? I think 15 minutes is too tight of a time frame for us to, at least I can only speak for myself, to
Why not-
participate in this kind of a meeting. I
Yeah, why not-
generally do listen in on planning commission meetings. and that is set at 5:30. We don't know what's on the agenda. But to have this meeting 15 minutes before council meeting, wouldn't it be, is it possible that this meeting could be scheduled for 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon?
That would be an hour and a half or 2.5 hours before the start of council.
Or 4:30?
Okay, that's 2.5
Or
hours.
5.
Well, the point of the, okay, I was trying to considerate of the time of our council members and, not have them have a totally separate meeting for this annual meeting. If there's a desire to allow ourselves more time, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to bring that back to the board of directors. I have to be there anyway, so it really doesn't matter to me.
Well, I think we're already 15 minutes into this meeting, and we're on the third item in the agenda. And thus far, we've talked about administrative matters. So in my view, it's likely that we'll need more than 15 minutes for the annual meeting. So I would request that you bring it up at an earlier time on Monday.
What time? Make a motion.
Marilyn, how about 5?
Okay, is that okay with everybody?
Yes, I'll
Sure.
second that in the form of a motion, Nancy, and I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
That's fine with me.
Okay. So 5 o'clock on the day before the February council meeting. Okay, we turn to the annual report, and I will lead this off with just some of the highlights. This is a narrative that we've put together, that Wally and I put together, really, about what transpired last year for the GCIC. So as you all know, on February 15th, 2020, we officially created the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation, of which everyone here, or all council members, myself and the treasurer are members. The immediate purpose was to allow greater flexibility in the purchase and sale of property owned by the village, and while maintaining proper appropriate control by council. As you recall, what really led to the formation of the CIC was that we found ourselves in a couple of instances selling village property, finding that we couldn't really effectively market it. Yes, we could put an ad in what they might loosely call on Wall Street a tombstone ad in some legal paper or paper of general circulation. We were not supposed to call people up. We were not supposed to really do much of anything other than that one ad. And then when the bids came in, we could not go back and say, well, and negotiate, just like any other seller of property. This is because of our status as a statutory village. We are bound by the Ohio Code in this regard. So we felt that we all decided the best thing to do was to form the GCIC that would have greater flexibility in discussing, in negotiating and marketing property. The council has designated the GCIC to be its agent for development within the village. On August 31st, council approved the transfer of properties at 1169 Cole Avenue and 94 Washington Avenue for sale. And on November 30th, the Cole Avenue property was sold to Jordan and Chelsea Barhorst for $38,000. The GCIC returned $9,173 of that to the village to compensate for the village's expenses in acquiring the property. And the remaining proceeds are in the account of the GCIC for future needs it might have to market other properties. So I guess I'd just say that at least the code, I can't say we've moved with lightning speed on this, but I think we've been appropriately prudent in moving forward. And the sale of the Cole Avenue property proved that the GCIC could carry out its intended function. I'm fully expecting that considerably other things will occur to the benefit of the village in 2021. And with that, I would ask our treasurer to give us some of the highlights from the financial report.
So I think all of you have received a copy of the financial statement. It was my first go around to put something together, and if we need to make changes in the future, I'll ask our solicitor to help me with with maybe some changes. The current cash on hand, which is what we have in our checking account at CF Bank, is $28,086, and it matches with a statement that I received, so that's good. Our net position, which includes land that was turned over from the village to the CIC, is a total of $34,772. That includes the cash on hand. And that comes about as a result of the assessed value of that land, which is the Washington property land, minus the expenses that the CIC would owe the village. So right now we have land that is assessed at $31,120 that if we sell, we hopefully can recoup what the current price is and be able to pay off what we owe the village. So at this time, this is all that we have. Any questions? Yes, Marilyn?
Yes. Mike, I'm wondering if while it's not much money in there right now and we're not holding much realty, I'm just wondering if the assets of the CIC is consolidated with those of the village to present a consolidated financial report.
Well, at this time, there are two separate checking accounts. So, we have a separate checking account. So it's something that we can share as a consolidated statement at some point, but there are two separate accounts.
And these assets, this income, this cash is not included in the village revenue or?
No, it is not. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hearing no other questions, I will assume the annual report has been concluded. That is all we have on our agenda. I would note, for the benefit of those who plan ahead, that the February council meeting in 2022 will be held on February 7th. So you can mark that date on your calendars. Is there any further business or discussion that folks would care to bring forward? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in
Hold
favor?
on. I've got one comment.
Okay.
I couldn't get my mute off. I'm sorry. I'm hearing an enormous amount of gossip going around the village about us selling off the green space.
Okay.
Now, I don't ever, I don't know who's saying it, where it's coming from. Is there anybody else has heard this, or is it just me?
Well, we are going to be, the board is going to be looking, the board of directors will be looking at properties that the village owns. And, there's a number of them that could be considered for sale and future development. And of course, it would all require going back to council and getting council's buy-in on whatever the board might care to propose.
Well,
So
I think we all know that. I'm just wondering where the rumors are flying hot and heavy that, the Glendale Council is selling the green space.
well, I think if you want to sit in on the board meeting, you can find out more about what the board's intention is. This is just the start of a conversation about selling properties that we own.
I understand that, but it's already a fait accompli that we have decided to sell the green space, and I don't know where that's coming from, and I don't know if I'm the only one that's heard it, but I've heard it a number of times.
Alan, right before Christmas, council got a bunch of emails from, I think it started on a Facebook page. It said it was already a done deal. And so it was just absolutely incorrect. Another beauty of social media is amazing how much false news can spread so quickly. But so we've all heard the rumors too, but I've been on council with you since August, and this is the first meeting I've had about anything with green space. So today for discussion. So translation, false news.
Yeah, the only authorization is the Washington property. That's the only authorization the CIC has from council to sell beyond the coal property at this time.
Well, just to be clear, we can also sell the 94 Washington, or did you say 94 Washington?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Yep. That's where we're at this point. So
Okay.
no, there's no done deal. There is no decision that's been made.
I keep saying that, but it keeps coming back. So
Keep saying it.
Yeah.
that's all I can do.
I agree. I'd like to support what Alan was saying in that I've received not only emails, but also letters. And there seems to be some anxiety, which I had not anticipated at this time, since this matter was not before council. And I was led to believe that it would come before the Community Improvement Corporation this afternoon. So there is, I don't know what's going on. So I'll just sit and listen. Thank you.
Yeah, we look to council to provide the CIC direction.
Okay. Any further discussion? I believe we have a motion to adjourn and a second on the table. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is correct.
So all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This meeting is over. David, I think we can just segue right into the board meeting on this Zoom link. We don't have to do a new Zoom.
Correct. That was the intention. So we can proceed into the Board of Directors meeting at your leisure.
Okay. And I am now going to call the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation to order. This meeting was sent, as was the membership meeting, was duly notified to send out with notice, and we have complied with all applicable rules to hold this meeting by virtual rather than in person. So I will begin with the I guess, ask the clerk to call the roll and determine that we have a quorum. Madam Clerk, this is for the
Okay.
directors now.
Okay, the Board of Directors meeting, roll call. Mayor Lofty,
Here,
Treasurer Beaugrand,
Here,
Ms. Verchot, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson,
you're on mute.
Unmute, I'm here. Sorry.
that's okay. Mr. Bridenstine,
Here.
Mr. Baysmith,
Here.
Mr. Bessel.
Here.
Thank you.
okay. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a quorum.
We indeed have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we in fact have everybody present here? I think we do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. I put out the agenda and then I found the need to add an item to it. And that will be just after item 4, the review and discussion of the mission statement, which will be to memorialize the verbal decision made at the November 19th board meeting concerning the proceeds from the sale of the Cole Avenue property. So we will take that up when it comes along. We have a written resolution now that will go into our records. I will also note that it was a public, in the public comment section, we really didn't know what to expect here as to how many people would want to speak. We did feel like 20 minutes was the time that we wanted to allocate for public comment at this board meeting. And so we said, well, okay, if we have 4 people, give them the standard council time limit of 5 minutes apiece. We ended up with 7 people who have indicated a desire to speak. And so to fit that in as close to 20 minutes as we can, and because a couple of people asked, why do nobody needs 5 minutes here, or maybe, we don't need 5 minutes. So we have cut it down to 3 minutes per speaker. As you can see, it's so it'll be the last substantive item on the agenda. We are also going to add to the agenda the setting of the date for the next annual meeting of the membership of the GCIC. As it turns out, under our code of regulations / bylaws, it is the duty of the board to set that date. So that will also be come up on the agenda. Right now, I would like to turn to the minutes of the meeting of November 19th, 2020. These have been circulated, and I would ask do I have a motion to accept these minutes as written?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We turn now to the election of our officers. Currently, it is myself as chairman, and vice chair is Mr. Bessel, and secretary and treasurer is Mr. Beaugrand. Does anyone wish to nominate anyone else for those positions?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion then to name those persons to the functions indicated?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We turn now to the mission statement, and I guess we've, maybe we had too much to do or too much time on our hands or whatever. But Wally and I both kind of thought that there should be some sort of statement of the mission of the GCIC. We drafted something fairly simple and straightforward. I can tell you that it does not legally restrict the GCIC. The GCIC, it's basically just kind of a roadmap for us, but with approval of council, we can do anything that is legally permitted under Ohio law. Main purpose, as I said at the last meeting, was just to allow the village greater flexibility in marketing property and in dealing with bidders, potential bidders on property the village might want to sell, or for that matter, negotiating with owners of property for property we might wish to buy. It just frees us up so much more over what we found to be some very restrictive provisions of Ohio law that limited our ability as a statutory village to do these things. So I'm open to hear it. This is just a first draft, but I don't know that we really want to have a long discussion on it. So here's where I'm at. Are there some basic changes that people would like to see made? And I'm open to hearing them. If it starts to get too involved, I'm going to urge that we just put this aside for the next meeting. So are there any changes?
I had none.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt this mission statement as the mission of the GCIC?
So moved.
Second?
Go ahead.
You have a second?
No. I was going to address the motion's been made. I was going to talk about the mission statement.
No, I'd like to get a second before we.
Second?
Okay.
Okay, is that Mr. Bogrand?
Yes.
Okay. Now, discussion.
Okay. It's a small thing, but when we say, or when the mission statement says, subject to the oversight of the village council to evaluate and address the economic development opportunities available to the village, it to me leaves the impression that we're like an independent body that can, evaluate and address, meaning like we have our own agency to do those things when our authority comes from council. So I think that I don't have any suggested language right now, but I think that is a little bit misleading when it comes to our mission.
If I could jump in, the revised code 1724 does determine that CICs are an independent nonprofit organization. So while council is one aspect of it, there are instances where the CIC may independently obtain property, act independent to dispose of it in a way that is consistent with the mission statement. And in fact, whenever they do anything like that, where they're not acting as agent of the village, they are able to, not that you want to, but they're allowed to do that outside the confines of the Open Meetings Act and all this stuff to which the public entities are beholden. So they're actually considered like a very quasi kind of public-private sort of organization. So I think it won't be inappropriate to suggest that they perhaps have both hats, to the extent that the CIC would want to focus their operations on their authority to act as the agent of the village. I think it's all right that they provide that in the mission statement.
Kathy, did you review this mission statement?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, before the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I still don't feel very comfortable with that language, and I'm not disputing what you say, but I think that this language could probably be adjusted. And if you give me some, I wasn't able to do it before today's meeting, and if anyone else has any thoughts on it, I'd welcome those too. But I think that that language is a bit misleading.
Okay, I think where I was coming from, and I think that was my language, and it may not have been as artfully phrased as it should have been. I know that when we formed the CIC, there was some concern about setting up an independent entity that could ignore the wishes of council. And now the reality is, since the members of council are also the members of the GCIC, and they have the ability to, I suppose, overrule a decision of the board if they really wanted to. And I've always said that if the board ever went rogue, the council could go nuclear and dissolve it and just say there is no more CIC, GCIC. So there is some, but maybe saying oversight implies a greater level of scrutiny or control than is either desirable or even contemplated under Ohio law. And I'm open to hearing another way of saying it. I was really trying to just kind of reassure people that know this, while this is an independent corporation, there is some level of control by council, if not as council per se, then as the membership of the GCIC.
Yeah, and Don, I distinctly remember that discussion from, when I was on council and we were talking about, sort of how to keep the CIC from going out of control, like you say, rogue. And that was a discussion. And, how much danger is there of that? I don't know. But when I see evaluate and address economic development opportunities, I get that it could be like viewed as a public-private type of arrangement, but it also gives a sense, obviously we're not, accountable to voters. And so we have to have, some derivative authority from someplace, which is the village council. And we're not completely independent. And I get that the statute might say that we have some independence, but my concern is that there's this idea that we can, act independently completely.
Joan, you don't understand. Now that you're on the board, you want all that independence. You didn't. But now that you're on the board, you've switched hats.
Right. When you see that for sale sign in front of your house, you'll know that I was acting independently.
In front of my house.
But to that point, so Kathy, help me out here. So we have $28,000. If the board, the CIC, decided to use that money to purchase other property within Glendale, so that we could, let's say, resell that property at a higher value because we thought it would add additional revenue for the CIC to, again, leverage in another endeavor, we would not have to go to council and say, can we do this? We would act upon ourselves to do that.
Correct. It would be contingent upon you to act within your mission statement to expend those funds consistent with that statement.
Right.
Understanding that this CIC in particular has a goal of bestowing some benefit back on the village directly, right, while some may have less than others. I agree with that. Yes.
Thanks.
And I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I don't know, subject to the oversight of the village council, maybe, I don't know if it helps or hurts in your eyes, but the statutory language, rather than subject to the oversight of the village council, may be something accorded by its legal status, acting as an agent of the village council. That's one option. It mirrors the language in the statute, and it still speaks to your focus of acting under the village primarily.
Kathy, are we required to have a mission statement?
You're not. If you desire to and you feel like it clarifies the mission moving forward and provides additional comfort level to the council to direct certain funds or properties to the CIC, then sure, have one. But it is not a requirement so long as you've got the code of regs and the articles that you're abiding by.
I think it's helpful and also for the residents so that residents understand, why, what's the purpose of the CIC and why they're to be. And I like the term agent of council because without council's direction, we do nothing.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and because the statute is so broad, where some CICs, even though they act as an agent of their county or their townships or wherever they're the CIC for, some of them have a very large component of acting independently, and the piece where it is the interaction between the public entity and the organization is much smaller, while some act almost exclusively as agent of the public entity. So while you're operating within the confines of that chapter 1724, to the extent that it's this CIC's particular goal to steer it more towards the focus of acting almost exclusively or exclusively for the village, then that's something that there's certainly nothing, there's nothing wrong with basically stating that as part of your mission. And let's say as time goes on, there are some opportunities within the village that are separate and apart from the village council, where there seems to be an evolution towards a different balance and the mission statement evolves a little bit. It's all still within the confines of the code of regulation and the articles of incorporation and still consistent with that. But it's just an extra layer to allow the CIC to kind of set up its focus from year to year and make sure that everyone is kind of on the same page as far as that focus is concerned.
Okay, I mean, I'm fine with putting this off until our next meeting of the board and letting, maybe, I would ask Kathy to maybe do some wordsmithing on it and circulate a draft that the board and members can look at and decide if that's what they want. We can do that at the next meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
How do you just one layman's thought, just so the CIC doesn't go rogue? I think just if the average citizen reads it and the word either oversight or agent of works, I think that helps just the clarification that there's a publicly elected body that oversees us. So if you can do it legally and leave oversight or agent, I think that helps a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We will then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is labeled as, let's see, no, wait a minute, nope, okay, not there yet. The next item on the agenda is the one that I have inserted into the agenda. It is labeled Resolution 2020-16. I believe David sent that out. Did that come out today, David? Okay, he's not.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This is really, though, just the written memorialization of a decision that was made by the board and has now been implemented, has already been implemented, regarding the proceeds from the sale of the property 1169 Cole Avenue. And I'll read the title of the resolution. It is a resolution of the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation authorizing the treasurer and executive director to reimburse the village of Glendale for expenses in procuring and raising the property at 1169 Cole Avenue. So basically, we sold the property, and when this resolution verbally was approved, we were in the process of selling the property. We knew we were going to get, we had the winning bid was $38,000, which we all were pleased to authorize the the executive director to accept. And the ordinance provides that when the money came in, the GCIC would return to the village $9,173, which represented basically our costs of acquisition. So everything's been done here. We would just like to have something in the written record showing what was done. So do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
We have a second.
Joan? Yeah, Joan, second.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion about this resolution? Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask that you call the roll on this one since it involves money.
Mayor Lofty,
Yes.
Treasurer Beaugrand,
Yes.
Ms. Verchot,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Bridenstine,
Yes.
Mr. Bessel,
Yes.
Mr. Baysmith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carried. The next item is a report on the potential sale of the property at 94 Washington Avenue. This property has been identified by council and the GCIC has been authorized to act as the agent for the village in selling the property. We have had some discussions about it, some of which had to be held in executive session in order to avoid any adverse effects on the village's negotiating position. And we are still, that matter is still kind of under consideration. We thought about some opportunities there, and all I can tell you is they are still being considered, but we're not ready to proceed with the actual sale of the property yet. It's kind of on hold at this point. Anybody else, is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary, Mr. Mayor.
So that's the report. We will move on now to item 6 on the agenda, which is the initial discussion of potential development of village-owned properties. Now, we have already identified some properties and talked about them that the village owns, that the village might, that are not being used at the time by the village, and that we might wish to sell for whatever purpose. Among the, other than the 94 Washington Avenue property, one is at 10860 Springfield Pike, which is close to our water tower. The other is a 10-acre parcel in the northeast area of the village at the corner of Glendale and Walnut Avenues. I want to stress that despite what you may have heard on Facebook or elsewhere, that we are not, we are in the very early stages of this discussion. No decisions have been made. We just want to consider what use there might be for these properties. And I would like to ask, I think Mr. Cordes or Mr. Lumsden to just maybe give us a reminder of these properties, what they are, and where they are.
Well, I can jump in. I'll talk about the Route 4 property. Many years ago, the property was acquired, potential ingress egress to the Summit Park, and that idea fell away because of the traffic flow on Route 4 and how awkward it would be to have a park entrance on Route 4. So therefore it's on Summit now. It is a buildable lot by appearance. I think some investigation needs to be taken into the means and bounds and verify there are no restrictive provisions in the deed. Location is just north of Van Ness, approximately where the corner of Summit Park Playground is, the park itself. Again, it's separated by a fence, so it's not used as part of that park. And that would be the Route 4 property.
Okay.
Would you like me to talk about the other property, sir?
Can you describe the 10-acre property, and then we'll go back to the Route 4 property?
Okay, I can do that by memory, I think. So back in the 40s, the multiple parcels were purchased in the area that some people call Johnny Park, and we call it the Northeast parcel as well. It goes all the way to the church in Springdale. It's 9.99999 acres, so therefore it's 10 acres. And it was purchased, and I found the original purchase agreement and resolution of council from the 40s. It was purchased with the intention of potentially developing into a park at some point. Don't know the purchase price. That information is not on the resolution, but we have maintained it primarily the front or the southern face of the parcel. We maintained for many years, and probably 15 years ago, we let it overgrow. And then there's some paths cut through it for walking for residents. It has utilities in front of it, on sides of it. And as far as we can tell, there are no restrictions in the deed that prevent sale or development.
Okay, getting back to the Springfield Pike property, my recollection is that there are some limitations, not limitations, but some factors that will make it more difficult to develop. I think is it not a full-size lot at this point?
You know, it may be a full-size lot, and that's where I need some help with a deed search to find out the exact meets and bounds. It looks like it might be a full-size lot, but it's irregular, making it difficult to put a house away from the road, if you will. You might recall there used to be a truck stop and a couple houses on Route 4. A couple of them are still there. They're very close to the road now. It's a busy state route. But pending an actual deed search or a survey to find out where the exact boundaries are, I believe it's buildable.
Is there any property abutting this that the village also owns that could be used to maybe expand it and make it a larger, more attractive piece for sale?
To the north and south, there are not. However, to the east, it meets and bounds with the Summit Park. The outer field buffer area would be meeting its boundary.
Okay, I guess a question is, I mean, is this something that we could have someone take a look at, someone from the outside, a realtor or somebody, and tell us whether it has any real potential, maybe not for residential, maybe for some small commercial development?
Well, to answer that question, to my ability, there are probably two approaches we could do simultaneously. We could have a surveyor, such as Duffy and Associates, who's familiar with our properties and zoning, evaluate it briefly to see if it is buildable. And then we could have a realtor give us a marketing perspective simultaneously.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, you itemize a number of potential uses of the properties that are being considered. Could we take a few moments perhaps and address why we are even considering selling various properties that are owned by the village?
You know, I agree with Jeff. I don't know if we're getting too far afield here about, separating out selling property and then, what council thinks a good use of the property might be. Like that would be a policy question versus the act of selling the properties, meaning what we as the CIC can do. And Jeff's point about why we're talking about it is a good one. I think that's a good discussion to have.
Well, my original thought here was in bringing this forward is, first of all, that at the moment, these properties are not being used at all or have a very low level of use by the village. So the CIC, I think it's within our mandate to, let's say, look at a property and develop a plan to present to council. Obviously, the property is still owned by the village. So it would take an act of council to convey it to the CIC such that we could sell it. But I think rather than having council do the research and the legwork on it, I think the CIC with its membership and its mandate would be in a position to talk to people outside the village, and get opinions and ideas from them. So that's why these things are being brought forward.
Yeah.
But Don, the purpose of going through the exercise to consider an alternate use or sale is what? What does that benefit the village? I guess I think that's part of the question. Why are we considering those properties?
As I say, because they are owned by the village, they are underutilized. And so we, the CIC, could well present to council after some research and discussion, an opportunity that hasn't occurred to council at this point.
Okay.
My question, I guess, Mr. Mayor, was basically, you pointed out that item 6A3, senior lifestyle housing, a number of people who have brought up the topic are in agreement saying, I would like to have a single floor home. I'd like to have a smaller home. And that is not something readily available in Glendale. And being able to purchase a home of that style and remain in Glendale is attractive to many. And it also has the value of bringing very necessary additional revenue to the village.
Does anyone know how much revenue?
Well, I think that's Joan, I think you have a great point there, because we don't know anything right now. Because and I'm going to talk about it from 2 points of view. As the treasurer of Glendale needs more money. We need more money to help our infrastructure and to help maintain a certain standard of living in Glendale. And the way we're structured today, there's not much upside coming up because there's no new properties being built. Our property taxes are flat. Our expenses continue to grow to provide the same service. So we have I think the village has a need as the treasurer. As a resident, as Jeff pointed out, there's really no land that's available other than what the village owns for new homes to be built for people that would like to downsize and stay in Glendale. There's no capacity for that today. There could be the opportunity that if Glendale would permit, that you could do like a lot of communities do. Montgomery is an example where they take a house and decide to knock it down because it's high maintenance, very difficult to renovate, and they just raze it to the ground and then build something that is more practical for the residents moving in. Montgomery has the extremes where they go bigger. I think Glendale would be looking to maybe go smaller. In the historic village, the historic section, it's very, very difficult to do that. Not necessarily that we want to do that. Outside of the district, it's still very difficult to do that. So opportunities to add additional space for homes to be built to address, I think, a non-need met for residents that, as Jeff said, that would like to stay in Glendale, but are forced to move out of this community. And I know some people said, well, good riddance, they need to move, but that's, that's just one-sided. So I think, what is the need? I think we need more revenue. And I think we need more housing opportunities for our senior citizens that are, would like to stay in Glendale without having to move out of this community, which I think the majority of them love, so.
Well, again, I mean, we have to investigate the revenue generation. We've talked about that for a long time. Everyone knows, we need revenue generation, but how, if that's what we have to look at, great. But using underutilized or taking underutilized village property might be an easy way to do that. But then the ambiance of the village, the way the village looks right now, our green space, those are important considerations too.
Oh, I fully support that. Yep, I understand.
They certainly are. I think part of the investigation has to be what revenue could be generated. And the other consideration along with additional revenue is additional population may be helpful to the village and village merchants. That could be a potential thing. And before we would get too far ahead of ourselves, I would also think that it may be necessary to spend some money on some sort of civil engineering to understand how a underutilized, in quotes, piece of property could be laid out in order to accommodate this desirable type of development, but also increase the value of the park space that is there. In other words, provide better amenities than what is just an open piece of ground. You wouldn't want to eliminate a large parcel without adding, and normally this is done in infill developments, a park amenity is added that would include a certain amount of land dedicated to park space, community use, and maybe have a playground in it or something like that. So
I mean, that's a good point.
Some serious work by either an engineer and some input from someone in the area of development that could give some indication of what values could be of that type of housing or type of building, so that you could apply a tax rate and see what that would benefit the village. You're also going to increase the demand for village services such as police, depending on how big that property is. So are you adding cost, and can your new revenue really offset that cost? I think on a 10-acre parcel it would. So it's a kind of a roundabout way of saying there's probably a lot of work to do. Going back just slightly to the mission statement as well, the term oversight or agent of, or some way that council, an elected body, oversees this is very important. The other piece, and this applies to the two ideas that are being addressed now, village-owned property cannot be used for anything unless the village says so. Even if this CIC group changed and were to somehow go rogue, so to speak, nothing can be done unless the village says we're willing to divest of this piece of property, or even change how the property is used, let alone divest. So those are my thoughts.
And to answer Mr. Basemith's question, I think another thing to always keep in mind is that the village has 72103 requiring them to offload property no longer needed for municipal purposes only through the competitive bidding process. And so this CIC affords the village an avenue by which you can dispose of property without doing that, with a way that has a more nuanced vision for where that property will go and what it will be used for, than you can have in the bidding process. And in order to do that, it's appropriate for the CIC as the quasi-independent body to take a look at the sorts of things, the marketing and the types of community development and all these things, and how you would want to sell it or market it. Look at the things that the village itself doesn't have the authority to do with that property. So while there is a cooperative, there's a cooperation between the entities to make sure that it isn't given to the CIC unless the council agrees with it. It's a contingent upon the CIC itself to undertake that authority, which the village does not actually have. If that makes sense.
But it just does sound like to me that there's a couple of properties here that might be developable, and I don't know the economics well enough to the tax revenues offset the additional expenses, but you would have to think that they have a possibility to. Senior lifestyle living, does the Springfield Pike property abut Summit? I think that's what somebody said. I don't know this geography very well, but if it does, you know, is there a way to put some classy senior citizen property? I'm just talking out the wazoo, but you know, this seems like there's a practical possibility here that we could end up with some classy senior citizen development off Springfield Pike, and I'm not sure how Summit is utilized. There's a lot of room there, and I'm not sure it's 100% utilized. But I think it's the kind of thing we ought to look into.
And I think that the CIC can look at all these opportunities and then bring those back to the board for consideration. And then the CIC could present this to council as, here's some opportunities to think about. So the CIC is not selling anything. It's just putting together some opportunities for council to consider. And then council can direct the CIC to pursue something or nothing at all.
So as part of that, you know, we have a list here that or proposed potential uses of property on those. Is it 3 or 4 properties that Wally just described? I mean, we're not looking at other green space like off of Oak, right? I mean, maybe I'm asking the wrong question. What's the difference between Johnny Park and the green space on Oak?
The green space on Oak is currently in Woodlawn, or is in Woodlawn. Glendale owns it.
It's Woodlawn and Glendale owns it.
Glendale owns it. So there are a couple of things going on there. Depending on the tax rate in Woodlawn, you might want to live in Woodlawn instead of Glendale, depending on the property taxes. However, I think to do that right, we would want to try to annex that into Glendale and then see if we could develop a section of that or just leave it as buffer.
I think you'd have a war if you tried to develop that green belt.
You probably would.
Yeah. And I believe, you know, maybe David or Wally can tell us, but I think truly the property that's on Oak is designated greenbelt, whereas nothing else is designated greenbelt.
I believe that's correct. It was purchased specifically for greenbelt buffer from the Skillman farm, which was predicted to become industrial at some point. Correct.
Another point that we might want to make too, I guess, that could be benefit to development. And I'm not promoting develop Oak, but part of the watershed problems we have up around Bethany School come from Woodlawn. And in any development, new stormwater, sewer, and stormwater runoff is always addressed. So a development of that Oak Road property could potentially not solve, but help limit the water runoff problems that exist in Glendale because of that watershed right there. And not promoting Oak, but talking about any property. There would need to be, all of that would need to be properly addressed and could create improvement when you do it from scratch for the entire village or the surrounding area, not just that part of the village. So just one more thing to add to consider.
Yeah. And I want to add also, I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, just to add something else that we could consider in the future. And frankly, I see doing anything with the development of the Greenbelt, the Oak Street Greenbelt, as very much in the future. Right now, we have some other, properties that are closer in and in their potential for development. Another is, of course, the property at Landmark.
Yeah.
We don't own it, but we have a great deal of control over it because it's in our village and we have it zoned. And so there's an opportunity there to probably, if we really saw a fantastic opportunity, to take that to the owners and see what could be done with it. But I see that as further off. For now, just like we started off looking at the two properties, one on Washington and one on Cole. I see the next stage as looking at the Springfield Pike property and the 10-acre parcel and deciding what, if anything, we want to do with that. If we go too broad, I'm concerned that we would lose focus and have trouble making a decision on anything. We certainly in the future can consider anything. I personally would be very much opposed to selling anything off of the Oak Street Greenbelt. Frankly, I lived across from it for many years when we were here before, so grew rather attached to it. But it also serves a very great purpose for the village that I would only, compromise. I'd have to be really persuaded on that one. Going back to the question of what could we do with the property at Springfield Pike, how would council feel about, I'm sorry, wrong meeting.
Wrong meeting.
How would the board feel about engaging Mr. Duffy, the surveyor, to just lay out the property and see what is potentially available there? Is it buildable or not, or what could be done with it? And as some have suggested, take a look at part of Summit, and we'll have to. The first step there is to check the deed to make sure that we have any discretion other than keeping it as a park, and we could consider what we might want to do there and what might be possible there if we have the legal ability. Would the board be willing to spend, and I don't know what it would cost, maybe you can set an amount as to what's your limit on what you'd spend on having a survey done, so we at least know what we're talking about?
I think I would be opposed on to doing a survey of that particular piece of property. Whether it extends into Summit Park is another question. And your survey is going to be $1,000. I don't know. I mean, it's not an expensive thing to find out the answer to the meets and bounds of that property.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. It would be good to know the property lines for sure. I mean, I've gone over there and I think you could throw up a house on there. And honestly, we could put a for sale sign like we did on Cole, put a price on there, and it would be gone. I guarantee you that. Price is the main thing, but I think the lot's big enough. You could put a house if you wanted to. And that's just my observation.
Wouldn't you want to investigate going bigger than that, just selling a lot for, I don't know, not that much money, and as opposed to if we could do something with Summit and have senior living, rather than just sell one little parcel, it doesn't solve much.
Sure. Yeah. So as Don pointed out, I think the first thing we need to understand is what are the limitations on Summit Park before we consider anything on that.
Yeah.
I think some of you may have gone on Hamilton County org, and Summit is already laid out with a whole subdivision in there. I mean, it was planned that way. It was set up that way. There's like 60 plus lots set up coming right off of Summit Avenue as a continuation of Summit Avenue, which was surprising to me. And I think it begs the question on what are the limitations on there? Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah, it's massive. I never realized that. So someone had a vision, I don't know if it was back in the 40s or what, of a continuation of that. And all those are individual lots that are set up there already. As Don pointed out, if this land was deeded to Glendale to remain a park forever, then that's what it is. If there's some wiggle room, then what's the opportunity there to use and this is just me, a portion of that for additional housing and still maintain a park environment? If you look at all the green, which I assume it's supposed to represent tree structure and lines and all that to the west, that's a lot of green there, and call it a green belt maybe, I don't know. But I think getting more information on what can or cannot be done before residents get bent out of shape that, we're selling off Glendale one piece at a time. Let's understand what the limitations are. I think landmark is a very good point also. We could buy part of landmark to do some development. I think there's lots of opportunities. But right now we have no directive from council other than sell Washington property. But the board, the CIC, can, given a vision statement like it was presented, could use that to look at opportunities that we could come back and present to council if council was interested in.
So an additional point about this map that you're looking at, the part that is shaded the light green is really not utilized for much of anything. You can see the ball field outlines, and for instance, the main field there that has the dirt infield, for those of you who've been up there with grass in the center, that outfield stops on that same borderline because the houses are already there. And then you can see the other ball field, and in the corner to the northwest. And once you get past that little dugout area, it's just underutilized. The biggest problem with the land right there is it's wet. So there again, it kind of begs for some stormwater detention or retention.
Yep. Good point, Mike.
I've got some qualms though about developing anything beyond any part of the baseball fields or soccer fields, because I've got great memories of my kids there. But I think it behooves us to look at least the green shaded area, get it surveyed, and find out what could be done. It's a large piece of ground.
Yeah.
But until we have a legal assessment of the deed on that land, it's just speculation at this time. So if we could get that answer, then we can open this up as this is a potential that the CIC can consider to evaluate as providing an offering to council to develop and address what I would consider some unmet needs for Glendale and its residents.
Anyone know how large that parcel is that somebody just sectioned off there in dark gray?
That's why I sectioned it off, Mike. Good question. According to Cagis, and Cagis is an approximation, it's 3.43 acres. That dark gray parcel. Something
like Mr. Johnson was talking about. So I think it's worth a look-see.
Okay, is the board willing to authorize the executive director to contact to arrange for a survey of the property?
Well, I think we need to understand the legal aspects of Summit altogether as a kind of a primary thing, because if the survey said, well, we need to add some more land to that property, to that little piece of land there. I don't know, David, if you could show where the village owns that land that's considered a parcel today.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to ask your question another way. I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking.
So the piece of property that Wally mentioned at the beginning of the discussion that is also owned by the village, that is not designated a park area today. And that's not that one.
David, I think it's the property to the south, just south of the house that fronts on Springfield Pike. Right there, yeah.
This property here?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I took to be from the discussion, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
That's a property we were talking about potentially selling earlier today.
right, yes.
So
yes.
that's the access to some.
That could be an access to Summit if Summit is ever developed beyond what we're talking about. But I think my recommendation to the board is we need to get an understanding. Number one is Summit, any portion of Summit developable? Can we develop it?
Yeah.
Does it meet the intent? It wasn't part of a donation to the village with stipulation that it could never be developed for anything other than a park. That would be my first order that I would ask, the CIC to consider. And then I would also, I would support spending some money to survey the lots so that we know where the property lines are.
I think I would suggest we start by surveying the lot and just find out what the story is behind that. David shadowed in an area to the north that was approximately 3 acres. I think we could have that surveyed, but to go into the park itself, I don't mind understanding the basis for the park and how it was established, and if it's designated as park space and nothing else, whether that be legal or it was just the wishes of the founding fathers. I can't say that I'm in favor of developing the park. I think 3 acres is a lot of ground if we can figure out how to use that. But my first question is, what is available that's underutilized? The little dot shows one parcel. David Lumsden outlined 3 acres that is definitely underutilized except for the deer. And I'm interested in what could potentially be done with that. If it needs to spill over into the park, that's another question.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second? I'm sorry, I'm confused. The 3.43 acres is part of Summit Park?
It's part of Summit Park, but it's heavily wooded, as you can see.
Right, yeah, okay, no, I wanted to make sure I understood it. Okay.
Yeah, it's heavily wooded and it's not used for anything.
It's not improved in any way for park use.
So Joan, to me, we've got a huge surface area there. Is there any limitation by a deed or whatever that says any portion of that land cannot be developed for anything? That would be question one.
The reason Mike is bringing this up is because it was given to us by Princeton School District to own this area. As I was told many, many years ago, it's a reversionary clause in the deed. So Mike is quite correct. We would have to investigate which parcels may or may not be revert back to Princeton.
I think the only place we want to survey at this point is the bright green property with the dot in it. That is the one that we identified as owned by the village and no restrictions on it. And we can investigate other possibilities and report back what we find to the board at the next board meeting.
Yeah, and it may be that parcel was part of the gift. I do not know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, in terms of board membership here, I would expect this to be an activist board. And so if board members want to be involved in just looking, doing some investigation, I'm hereby inviting you to, I'd like you to get in touch with me and with the administrator to just let us know what you're doing. But, we'd like to get input from a lot of different sources here. So just let us know what, if you're interested in doing something, and we can figure out how to move forward.
Just how difficult is it to find out about those restrictions if they exist? Is that a terribly difficult challenge?
The lawyer's answer to that is simple. It depends.
Really?
Sounds right.
Can you tell us?
We don't know until we start looking.
There are two, Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
It may be very easy, and we may get the answer right away, or it may be like one of those home projects you do where you start in on it and you open up a wall and all of a sudden you find all kinds of bad stuff in there. So we just, the only thing we are suggesting now is that some further research could be done on what could be done about these properties on Springfield Pike. And specifically the survey of the one property and the investigation of deed restrictions in the other. Kathy, question for you. Do we need any board specific authorization to spend money on a survey, or is it sufficient that the board is just by consensus seems to agree to it?
The board agrees to it, not knowing the amount, then that's sufficient.
No.
If the board wants to wait to just direct some preliminary work to get quotes for that sort of thing, then they can do that too. It just depends on what they feel they need, authorization they need to give the executive director.
Okay, suppose the board says you can do the survey, but don't spend more than $1,500.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so we don't need a resolution on that. We can just do it.
Just, I would do a verbal resolution, have everybody vote. If everybody's on agreement that expenditure should be made for that purpose up to that amount, then you could proceed.
Now, should we also I assume that we can do the research about the deed and that without any board authorization, right?
Correct.
Okay,
If there's a need for, if there's something that gives rise to a need for a full title report on this, that's going to cost more money and require additional engaging a title attorney or title firm to do, then I think that might be something that you'd want to go back to the board to get authorization to take it that far. But if it's something where pulling some preliminary deeds and looking at what restrictive covenants exist on them, that I don't envision being something that you would need any sort of official approval for.
okay, so do I have a motion to authorize the executive director to engage a surveyor to survey the property at 10860 Springfield Pike for an amount not to exceed $1,500.
Yeah, so move.
Is that
Second,
one property?
just one property.
Just the
One
one.
property, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Right,
only-
one property.
Right. Okay, any further discussion?
Just so, since it's a continuation, and just for the audience also. So as David has this full screen showing all the property that we believe makes up the park. To my understanding, there's land to the east of the fence line on in Summit Park that was donated or gifted to the village that is also shown on this screen. I don't know, David, if you could.
Is it this parcel?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think understanding clarity of what all that is something else that, yes, that we need to understand. So to the discussion, to the original motion, I think we ought to proceed with that, but so I'll shut up right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we will.
So is that village property?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay.
It is. It is.
All right.
The Chen family donated it to us and put a restriction on it. That definitely has a restriction on it, never to be built on, but to be used for park only.
Okay.
Reason. However, if you look further to the north of David's green spot, the lot slightly to the right, I'm trying to find, where's Friendly Stop? There we go. There we go, David. That's it. There we go.
You know that, Wally.
That is the Sam Allen family property that was donated to the village. It actually has access off of Grove Avenue. And there may or may not be restrictions on that lot. I am not familiar. That might be worth looking into as well. So currently a developable lot.
So I just brought that up just because, as you know, I've become more educated as I've looked at all the land in Glendale that's not bringing revenue for our infrastructure. These are things that are not known to people that I think would be good to understand and to see if there's opportunities there also. So I think putting everything out on the table so that we understand what is all the land that's available in Glendale, what are the restrictions on the land that is available, and therefore what are the opportunities on the remaining land. So then the CIC could consider these things and then bring forth some proposals to council to consider or not.
Okay, one other thing, and then I would like to move on to the 10-acre parcel. Is if, given that this is on a fairly, the property we're looking at, we're going to survey is on a fairly busy street, residential may not be the ideal use for it. Would there be any appetite to recommend to council, and it would have to go through planning commission, that there be a zoning change that would allow either a small restaurant or a doctor's office or some other semi-commercial establishment?
I would suggest we get the answers to the first questions.
Yes.
And then decide if we need to look further into alternate use.
Okay, I've planted a seed. That's all I need to do. Turning to the 10-acre parcel, and it is the largest.
So I'm sorry, Don, do we need to vote on the motion, or it's just a directive?
Okay, I'm sorry. Where'd we end up on that one? Did we?
So we
have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. Thanks for reminding me, Mike. So the 10-acre parcel at Glendale and Walnut Avenues is, it's, I guess we'd have to, following what we've thought about here, we'd have to make sure that we've got a good survey that's been done on it. And we would need to look for the deed to check for any restrictions as preliminary steps. But this property, I suppose, could have a number of uses. It's currently, I would call it green space right now, pure green space. It could be built up into a park, and it could be developed either for residential, either for senior living, or for just general residential space. So I'm just, I don't know, does anybody want to lead off a discussion here or think about some next steps to do with this property?
So I believe, Wally, did we not survey this already? So we know the property lines and
We did. It's 9.999 acres or 10 acres.
And it's basically 3 plots of land, 2 that are almost identical, then a little short one there on the left.
Correct.
Well, what I bring back to the CIC here is, again, it's I think the CIC ought to explore what are all the opportunities in the village to address these unmet needs as I bring up, which is more money and addressing additional housing and so forth. So I mean, a proposal would be if the CIC would entertain contacting developers and say, hey, we have land in Glendale and we're looking at maximizing some of these parameters. Help us out. What do you think? And, so that we have something to come back to review with this board other than just talking about it.
Yeah.
And if we could do that with developers that are interested in, of course, they're going to be making money, but if they could do this at no cost to the CIC as a starting point, that would spur the discussion that then we could come back and discuss as a group here that said, hey, here's all the land that's around here and that we're allowed to do something with. And here's some proposals. What do you think? And what should we maybe bring up to council as a consideration?
Yep.
I think that timing wise is something that we ought to consider the market presently. I think we all are aware that the housing market is hot right now, and it might be an opportune moment. We should not delay.
Okay, I would just to throw my 2 cents in and build on what Mike was saying. If we do put this out to developers, there may be some feeling that, well, we shouldn't put any restrictions on them. Let them just come back to us with what they think is the best way to use the property. I would like, and I'm okay with that. But I would also like to see how they would, what they would do if they were required to put just senior living housing on there, so that we would know what perhaps we were giving up by insisting on that.
So
I'd also like to know.
can I just,
Could I just finish the thought and then I'll.
sure, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'd also like to know, stress that Glendale is a tree city for 25 consecutive years now. We value our trees very much. What steps would a responsible developer take to maximize the preservation of particularly old growth trees on the property? That's all I had to say on that one.
So my question is to go back to what you characterized before, Don. This property is a green space, not the green belt. And what's the difference?
Well, I see the belt as a longer piece of property. I mean, it stretches from point A to point B, like on Oak. This is a plot. This is just a piece of property that is basically surrounded by development, except on the north end, which is the church. So, I see it. I look at it differently.
Yeah, okay, because I mean, I thought green belt necessarily meant green space surrounding the village, like Oak Road, like, all these other, areas. And I thought that's what this was. So thanks for clarifying. I don't think you're going to have developers walk that property. I don't think limiting it, and you want to give council, we want to give council, the full picture. I don't think you can limit it to senior housing. I think you have to ask them about developing that.
I agree with Joan. I think you would like to get a perspective from a developer. They are professionals. They know what would sell. You don't want to try to force things on them. However, I think you could say to the developer that if this is to be developed, one of the needs currently in Glendale, and now you've got their attention, one of the needs currently in Glendale is senior housing. I also think there are a lot of young families in Glendale. Perhaps new homes geared towards families could work, maybe. But I think if you give them some guidance that we would like to see some type of senior housing, plus senior housing is a hot item right now. I think a lot of developers understand it's saleable. So, but I would leave a lot of, to me, it's foolish not to use the expertise of someone who's got it and see what they think is the best thing if we were to develop that.
I agree with that, Mike, but I would like to have them give us a plan one plan, even they say, this is the best way to develop this property. This will maximize the, everything for the village and all that. But then here is another way, if you really want to just free up housing for, seniors in the village, here's what it would look like. Here's what it would cost in terms of your return. You wouldn't get as much money for it because you're restricting us from what we think is optimal. And I'd like to know, what's the difference?
You'll probably end up with somebody providing some mix of things.
Well, we do have a restriction on that land as, I think, Wally, David, I think it's what, 1/3 acre or something?
It is zone 1/3 acre, correct?
Yeah. So that's a starting point, I think, in a discussion. It's like, hey, how many lots could you put in here, maintaining, tree structure, tree canopies and all that? I mean, most of the stuff that's back there is scrub brush. I mean, I'd love to have real trees. Well, I shouldn't use that term. But
I don't
anyway,
think there's a lot of old growth back there, Mike, if that's where you're headed. I think but there are some nice trees in that area. That should be preserved.
On the topic of trees, as someone who has filled out the Villages Tree City USA application for the majority of the last decade, the Arbor Day Foundation puts a lot of weight on responsible forestry management as well as programs that improve forestry spaces. So to Mike's point, both Mike's points, that preserving old trees as well as removing things like scrub brush and overgrowth and non-natural invasive species is definitely within Tree City USA guidelines.
very much like we did on Oak Road, where we cleaned out all that, because that was a disaster.
The Oak Road project was one of the things that led us towards a growth award this year, and then ultimately the Sterling Community designation.
David, could you outline the property that we're talking about?
Sure.
And that is 10 acres right there?
I think
The bottom parcel goes to the left, David.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. Being somewhat technical, but that just doesn't look like 10 acres.
That's it. It's actually 9.999.
Again, Cages is an approximation.
Okay.
Hey, David, on that point, I'm on Cages on my other screen. And for that property, it comes up at, the Cages is telling me that's 24.28 acres.
And that is a mistake. I looked into that, Tom, and had John Duffy clarify it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question I had, totally off subject a bit at least, and that is whether there's any thought, would be any thought given to expanding the scope of our analysis, if you will, to the north, jumping over to the Springdale line onto the church property. David, I don't know if you can span northward a bit, but it looks like there's similarly situated property that's unutilized by the church. This is just kind of brainstorming here, but if that's an opportunity for the church to increase or have some source of revenue and expand the housing opportunities in this corner of our village, their city, I'm wondering if that question could also be posed to whoever's looking at this. Of course, you'd have to do it with the church's permission, but not necessarily the study, but any development would have to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a huge change in elevation from that northeast corner all the way down to the bottom of the driveway there. I've walked that whole property, but it it would add a lot of different perspective. That's a good point, Tom. Hadn't thought about that.
I guess another question is, they're 1/3 acre, it's zoned for 1/3 acre lots now. If a developer felt that really a another size would be more appropriate and because these days we're told people don't want the larger lots, not that 1/3 acre is that large, but they could recommend some other size. And it would be interesting to hear what a seasoned developer would have to say about that.
I think, Don, typically the patio homes are much smaller than 1/3 acre lots. And since we're working within the confines of a CIC, that's the beauty of it. We can consider what they say and say we don't like that, or we can consider what they say and say we do like that.
Okay, so the next step here, I think, is just to reach out to some people outside who are developers who could come back to us and let us know what they feel would be the best way to utilize this property, and do it from, okay, here's your best financial gain. Now, if you really want senior housing, here's your best configuration there. If you really want to maximize tree preservation, here's what you do. If you want to consider other size lots, here's what you can do, and put it on the table and see what they come back with.
Oh, so a question, Don. Some developers may be good at that. Other developers need to see something a little more concrete. One approach, although it would involve spending money, would be to work with an engineering firm to get some perspective on what type of development that land could support. I'm not sure at this point, and I'm in touch with developers at various times. I'm not sure what is the best approach at this moment, just speaking frankly. Is it best to call a home builder and say, what do you think of this? Or is it best to talk to an engineer first? I don't know.
So Mike, my recommendation is let's talk to someone that has a general idea without spending any money.
That's what I like, yes.
No, because it's one of those, as soon as you mention engineer, it's I'm going to throw that out like attorneys. It's time and money.
Hours, right?
Yeah.
Right. Hey, Mike,
yeah.
Mike Bessel, I'm sorry. Have we had a developer look at that property before? I can't remember.
I know that some developers have expressed interest, and one in particular has done work in the village before and developed Heatherington. So
okay,
you might start there. I would suggest there's going to need to be a lot of guidance though, and expectations set, and essentially it's sort of an eyeball to eyeball when you say, how far can you get me without spending any money, right? So I guess it requires the right people to be involved and try to move this forward without getting the apple cart upset.
Yeah. I agree with you, Mike, because the other side of this is, if it sounds promising, then it would be one of those where I would go back to council and said, what do you guys think about? And see how far council would like us to pursue this. And
I agree. That's part of my questioning, how far do we take it?
Yep. Yeah. And I'd want this to be totally transparent, because I know there's a lot of people in the audience here that, want to crucify us for doing something that we haven't done yet. But I don't want us to do any work beyond exploratory avenues here until council said, I think it's a great idea. I would offer support as a council member that for the good of the village, we ought to pursue this and give the CIC direction to pursue this further, and maybe even help us with some money if it's necessary.
Okay. And I think there are a lot of people that, like you say, have different opinions, different concerns, and they're all very legitimate. But the point that you've made that I agree with is that you'll do a certain amount of exploratory. Does it even make sense? And then before you go too far or before you spend any money, you need to hear from council and village constituents. What do we think of this? In that way, you're being fair to council, to all the residents, and you're also being fair to any developer that might want to get involved.
Right.
Okay. So I think we're in the same place.
All right. Maybe a couple of us can get together and just put together a kind of rough outline of what we're looking for from a developer, and then, you know, take that to some who might, and see who's interested. My sense is that there are developers who would be very much interested in this property. So we'll just see what happens with it. And I don't think we need a vote of the board at this point to move forward. We'll just do some research and come back. If people want to kind of serve in this group, let me know. Mike Bessel, I think you'll be the lead horse here. And otherwise, you know, if other people want to be involved, up to a point of, we can't have so many people involved that we get a quorum of the board, because then we'd have to call a meeting every time we get together. So with that limitation, just let me know if you want to be involved.
Including residents that are, you know, viewing this or may view this in the future, if they want to be involved in checking out some of these things, I think we ought to open up to additional help.
I'm open to that too. I'm also open if people feel that there are other uses for this property that we haven't talked about very much. And I'm particularly thinking, you know, of parkland. What proposal, if they have a proposal that they would like to put forward, I'd like to see it, you know, and you know, just so we have all of the options fleshed out, and we can consider them.
And I think, Don, to that point, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think to the point of the mission that you've drafted, I think residents ought to participate in the context of the mission of, you know, what do we want to do for Glendale? What are the needs for Glendale? Because it would be helpful for then residents to come up with ideas on how to address some of the needs for Glendale. And it could be this mission, or it could be some other things that we don't know about yet. But
okay, were you disagreeing with me, or?
No. I'm just talking too much. I'm sorry.
Sure. Okay. Speaking of residents, we have a number of people who have asked for the ability to speak at this meeting. And we've been through a fair amount of discussion. We've got some action steps on two properties here. And so what I would like to do is for the next 20 minutes, 21 minutes to be precise, ask the people who have signed up to do this to to come forward one at a time, and I'll call their names. David gave me a list of the names of people who have signed up, and they can tell us what they have to say, what they're thinking about. So I'm going to start by inviting Gabriel Rhodes to come forward. Gabriel, are you there? David, are you there?
David had to step away. He'll be back shortly, sir.
Okay, can anybody promote Gabriel to a speaking role?
Matthew, can you do that?
Do not see a Gabriel in the attendees.
I guess we move to the next one, Don.
Next one, yeah.
Okay. Cindy Morris, Mooris, Morris.
She is also not in the attendees.
Should go quickly. Ron Vischer. Ron, are you here?
Ron is not there either.
Lee Thomas.
not in there as well. Do you just want me to let you know who is in there?
Cindy Taylor?
She is.
Okay. Cindy, Matthew, can you promote her and we can hear from her?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Ollie, would you keep time on this for 3 minutes?
Certainly.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, first of all, I want to address Alan Howeller. I keep hearing feedback.
We can hear you.
Okay, but I'm hearing myself. Okay, now I'm not. This is really bad because I'm hearing myself speak after I speak.
For what it's worth, Cindy, we hear you without that.
Okay, if you hear me stop a few times, it's because I'm hearing myself speak and can't speak. All right, let's reset that 3 minutes. So I'm making residents aware that it's a possibility it can be built on, because I was really shocked when I heard it was a possibility. I have never said that it was a definite, but I know I was told that it was a council decision. And I said I thought the residents should vote on something that changes Glendale this much. On the last survey that went out, it was overwhelmingly against building or developing Glendale green space. And I think you should get together a group of, or I can get together a group of out of the box thinkers, because Glendale's known for its green space. And I've watched most of it disappear over my lifetime. I've been around longer than any of you and have seen it happen. And you talk about the Glendale residents downsizing to ranch style homes, but I think my guess is that it would be Wyoming residents moving to the homes to get away from the school tax rather than Glendale residents. That's what's been done in the past. And if you do build there, eventually, if it is voted in,
1 minute.
I would suggest putting on septic, since the sewer system seems to be overloaded already. Concerning the Springfield Pike property, the 10864 property next to it may be going on the market soon. So there could be a possibility that those two lots are next to each other. I'm not sure. I just looked at the property yesterday. I just want to make sure. I felt like when this committee was formed, it was kind of pre-selected, and I've just been following it. I want to make sure that residents really have the ability to let their thoughts be known on how things should be done, because this is a huge change from the Glendale that I know. All right, I'm done.
Can I respond to that, please? Don?
Okay, very briefly, Alan, because this really isn't,
I understand that.
but go you, since
Okay.
she talked about you, you can talk about it.
Okay, I would assume that if somebody wants to say something that happened in council, or accuse council of doing something behind the backs of people, they might want to call some council people. They might want to follow up on their facts before they spread those rumors. Thank you.
Okay, next person I have is Kevin Parrish. Mr. Parrish, are you there?
Yes, he is here.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Proceed when you're ready.
I'm ready. Just for clarification purposes, as far as the landmarks of Glendale property, or Glendale land that is in Glendale property. And when you cross over Chester Road going up into the landmark on Oak, everything north to Sharon Road is that acreage in Glendale, minus the acreage that is owned by a church. I just wanted to state that for the record so that people would know how much acreage is there. Before the GCIC was developed, we tried to solicitate developers to develop that land. And I don't know why, with all the effort that went in that you haven't updated people about that. In looking at the Glendale CIC, I noticed that members of council are on that committee. Members of council are on the board, a majority group of them, and even the mayor is the chair of the board of directors. So I don't think that you have a lack of control. And when you say that anything the GCIC brings to council, I don't think that it would lead to much resistance since most of the members are involved in this. It seems like it's operating with total control, and there's a lack of independence because as anybody knows, in any investigation with the House will not condemn the House when it is investigating itself. As far as the Glendale CIC, which is a corporation is a legal form of business that is separate from its owners. In other words, it's a business that is a separate legal entity.
1 minute.
The basic corporate structure consists of the shareholders, board of directors, and officers. The owners of a corporation is its shareholders. It seems like in this case that the members or council members that seem to be the shareholders, because I see nothing other than members of council, but a couple, as on this entity that's representing Glendale. Also, there's a question of, we don't hear much about the quiet zone, which came up under Glendale improvement activists, and yet we haven't heard how the maintenance fees are being paid. Is it being paid by the Village of Glendale, or is it being paid out of the Proctor Fund, which pays for most things that we misrepresent? I'm through.
Okay, thank you.
Don.
Yes.
This is Marilyn. I just want to quickly correct a misstatement that there are only 2 members of council, Mike Bessel and Jeff Bay Smith, who are on the CIC board. The rest of us, Nancy Masinko, myself, Alan, and Will Kreidler, are merely listening in. Don as mayor is on the CIC board, and Mike Bogran as treasurer is also on the board. But this is far from the complete board members who are on this CIC. I'm sorry, far from all council members who are on this board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the agenda that I set out. We've had, I think, a good, productive meeting here. We've gotten a lot of ideas and thoughts out on the table.
Hey, Don, I hate to interrupt, but there's other people who are attendees who haven't spoken. They might not be on your list, but they're on the list of attendees.
Right, but they did not sign up to speak.
Okay.
And several of them said they didn't want to speak. We just had to take the roll as to who came forward. Now, if anybody who signed up to speak and wasn't here before is now here, I'm open to hearing from them now. Matthew, are you getting any raised hands there?
I have no raised hand. Oh, I do have one from Kevin Parrish again.
Okay, I think he used up his 3 minutes. So
okay.
Did he not? Did he have
He ended it exactly at 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay. I think we've got to then stick with our rule of how much time we're going to allow everybody. Otherwise, other people may want to come back. So
Don, before you conclude here, so I want to make sure, what are the actionable items that we're going after? I mean, one, we voted on to allow the spending of funds to survey the land on Route 4. We're going to inquire about the deed property on Summit. And we're going to contact or evaluate as an independent group of with Mike Bessel leading to contact developers to see if they would be interested in providing a proposal for the 9.9 acres at this time.
thank you. I think that's just the way they would have done it at P&G after a meeting. Get all those action steps out there. So very good. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
One further question, Don. As ideas come to residents or committee members regarding any of these properties, including ideas for the so-called landmark property, is it okay to bring those to this committee or ask for a meeting of this committee to consider these thoughts?
Good question. I mean, I've said that at some point, I'd like to look at the landmark property. If somebody has some really great idea for it, I guess sure, tell and my plan is to do public comment at every meeting. Mm-hmm. So they can either pick up the phone and call somebody, or they can wait for a meeting and then address the board about what their thought is on it.
Okay. Got it. Okay. I just want to make sure that that's the avenue people can take, whether, again, it be one of us on a committee or someone in the general public, to either be able to bring thoughts and ideas to meetings or request a meeting.
That's
based on.
Well, requesting, when you say request a meeting.
I have this, suppose the resident has a concept that they would like to present. Are they allowed to call, say, the chair of this body and say, I'd like to present this? Can we get a meeting? Or?
Well, like I don't know if we would actually call a separate meeting just for one person's proposal, but okay. we will have meetings of the board.
Okay.
When we meet, we'll have a public comment
period. Got it. Okay.
I mean, okay.
So maybe to clarify what Mike, because I can see people in the viewing audience that say, hey, I've got some ideas. Maybe I can draft something and maybe I can send it to the chair for the chair to review this. And then maybe the chair can distribute that to the board members and said, hey, here's a resident that proposed some ideas. Maybe we can explore this at an upcoming meeting.
Mm-hmm.
When is the next meeting?
Yeah, that's there you go. And if it's compelling enough, could there be a meeting called for that purpose?
Sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, I would circulate an idea that comes in, and if people feel, wow, I just want to jump in on this one and
okay.
get on now, then we could do that.
And then my second question was going to be what Jeff just said. When is our next meeting? Because we have action items, and the best way to get action items done is hold feet to the fire.
Oh, really? Okay.
I sound like P&G.
Yeah, there. Okay, so what do you think would be a reasonable time frame to get this done?
About a month.
Okay. Looking ahead, of course, that would be March 10th is on a Wednesday. No, yes, it's of course on a Wednesday because February has only 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
We could do it on Wednesday, the March 10th.
I'm unavailable. I have a conflict all day on the 10th.
Okay. How about the 11th?
I'm good with that.
How's the March 11th for everybody?
It's okay right now.
Anybody? I don't hear any no's. So, okay, the next meeting will be March 10th. And shall we push it? a
March
little?
11th.
Well, I said 11. I meant 11. Yeah. And should we push it a little bit later so that maybe people who work can, can join us?
That's fine.
How about 5 o'clock
Okay.
on the 11th? All right.
Bob, that work for you? You're on mute.
Bob,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, later is better.
Okay. For the viewing audience, there are not two Michael Bogrands on the audience there. There's only one. That's
One has more hair, and
Mike, I was really worried about that.
but I'm good at 5 o'clock. That's what was the question.
Okay. Any other items? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for the people from the public who came forward to talk to us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.